leaders in NRL SuperCoach are incoming. Bringing you the ultimate insight to help you win your leagues and climb up the rankings. You're now listening to the Insight NRL Show with your hosts, Brain, Metrics, and Whisperer.
G'day everybody, welcome back to the Insight NRL Show. I am the SuperCoach Brain and the SuperCoach Whisperer is with me tonight. We've got no Matrix. He's a very busy man. He's got basketball and God knows what else. But Josh, we're here to talk schedule, mate. It's the big thing that people focus on to start the year, and there's plenty of relevance when we're looking at it tonight.
Yeah, I think a couple of guns are quite, schedule relevant. We've chatted about guys like Latrell. We've chatted about guys like Appy that are potentially missing round one, and the draw sort of takes a turn. So it really comes down to if you start with those guys or not. But there's also a lot of guns that have really good draws, not only for the first three rounds, but there's a couple that are good all the way up until round 19. So it's definitely worth keeping an eye out, having a look at the graphics, following the socials, following all of us, and then we'll be making content based around schedules because we're only 33 days out, which is scary to say. But a month to go, mate. I feel like after you look at schedules, you should near enough be locked in before trials. Yeah,
that's right. We've got obviously plenty of footy to see through the trial period, and yes, the draw is pretty relevant, but for the most part, we haven't seen any footy just yet. We've seen teams change a fair bit through the off-season, so these draws and these strength of schedules are still based on last year's stats. So that's all we can work on at the moment, but we've pretty much done all the hard yards for you. So we've put it all together in a 1 to 19 graphic. You can see all 19 rounds there. We'll pop it up on the screen tonight. You can also download it from all of our socials, so you'll find it there. But plenty to talk about tonight, and we'll dive into that. We'll split it into two parts. The first round, 11 rounds, is pretty relevant up until Origin, and we'll also talk about that little period between round 12 and 19 this year that's going to be determining where you finish in the rankings, I think. But before we jump into that, please hit like and subscribe. We would really appreciate it. It helps us grow the channel. And if you're listening to us on audio, Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever it is you listen to us, give us a follow and a 5-star review if you like the content. And also, if you haven't yet, jump into the Unlimited League. It is 211518. 211518 is the code, and that will get you into the Unlimited League where we give away a standard squeeze prize pack to the top scorer every single week, thanks to the standard squeeze. Now, Josh, we've been putting together our rankings in the Patreon. We've got the 2RF coming up very soon and a fair few write-ups in there as well. And if you wanted to become a Patreon member, this is what's involved.
Want to take your SuperCoach game to the next level? Insight Fantasy Sports are bringing you exclusive content all year round, such as weekly expert Q&As, team, trade, and captaincy advice, statistical deep dives, priority podcast questions, and tons more. So what are you waiting for? Get full access to the experts. Go to patreon.com/Insight Fantasy Sports and subscribe to Insight Unlimited today.
Josh, I told the American guy he'd get a bit of airtime maybe once every 2 to 3 episodes, so had to hold my promise.
Yeah, we're on royalties, so how often you sign up because of that ad, we have to give money to you.
Yeah, we have to pay him more than what you pay us as well, so it's not a good deal for us at all. No, I'm kidding. If you want extra from us, jump in the Patreon. Now, this is the graphic you're going to see on screen here. Now, as you can see here, we've done rounds 1 to 19, all the buys. What you'll see is 4 different colors on the screen as well for those of you watching on YouTube. If you're listening on audio, I'd recommend you hop over and just watch this one on YouTube just for the sake of it. But we'll see dark green, light green, orange, and red, Josh. I think it goes without saying, doesn't it? Dark green is the favorable matchup. Light green is still a good matchup. So these are all based on the numbers regarding SuperCoach points scored against or conceded throughout the year, Josh.
Yeah. Top 4 sides in red, 5 to 9 in orange, 10 to 13 in light green, and 14 onwards to the dark green. You can get a good idea if you're a visual learner like myself. You get a better idea as to planning, and then we've obviously factored in the buys there too as well. In the graphic, when you guys are looking at it, you'll see that the Titans at the top, Melbourne a second. That's not filtered by any kind of draw ranking system. It's just purely easy for you guys to follow on through the buys. You can see those in a nice XY axis there that Brain's put in there, and then we go all the way up to round 19, where that's the last round of those minor buys.
Yeah, that's right. And obviously around 12, 15 and 18, I think it's the big change. The last couple of years we've been looking at 13, 16, 19, haven't we, as the major buy rounds? And this year it's 12, 15 and 18. So we're a little bit earlier. Magic round is around earlier this year as well. So yeah, it's a couple of changes, but just as long as you're on top of the fact that we're going to have most of the or 7 teams on a buy in those major buy rounds, they're the ones that you need to focus on and make sure that you can get your best players on the park, essentially your best 13 on the park, because the scoring in the major buys is different to the scoring of the rest of the year, isn't it, Josh?
Yeah, so like Brian said, it's going to go 7-3-1, 7-3-1, 7-3-1 in terms of teams that are out over that buy period. Best 13 for the major buys, and then the minor buys, the ones a week after, where there are 3 teams out. It's tough titties. You need to front up a whole team. So it's all well and good to cheat through rounds 12, 15, and 18. But yeah, 13, 16, 19, when the 3 teams are out, it's just a regular week. You're just going to have 200%, 300% more teams on a buy. So it's going to be a bit of planning, working out which players aren't playing Origin or which ones do you think are backing up. We will obviously cover those every Wednesday for our weekly previews when they're coming out during the season. But just giving you guys an idea of when you are looking over the schedule now, that in those rounds following the major buys, that you still need to front up a whole team, and it will be obviously best 17 this season with the introduction of the flex position.
Yeah, that's right. Flex, completely different kettle of fish as well. We'll be talking about that a fair bit in the lead up to the season starting. But let's rip in, mate. The first 11 rounds, obviously a lot of relevance there when we're picking our initial teams, because this is something you're going to need to look at when teams have buys to start things. What their buy period looks like from rounds 12 to 19 is also very important, considering, the initial 25, 26 now players that we pick. Ideally, you're going to want to probably hold at least 15 of those guys through that period. You're not going to want to just kind of move all of them on. So you're going to need to look from a season-long perspective as well. So these rounds 12 to 19 are as relevant. If we bring it up on the screen very quickly, the first thing that I notice here is that there's 4 teams I should look at for the first 3 rounds that have some pretty nice starts to the season, Josh. We're looking at Newcastle, who have the Tigers, Dolphins, and the Gold Coast Titans. We're also looking at the Bulldogs there, who have the Dragons, the Titans, and the Eels. We're looking at the Tigers, and it's hard to say the Tigers have a favourable schedule, but they are playing against bottom 8 defensive sides in Newcastle, Para, and the Dolphins. And then obviously we've got the Dolphins themselves, who have Souths, Newcastle, and the Tigers to start things off. I guess from those 4 teams, mate, what are you looking at there in terms of player relevance?
Yeah, obviously we can't rank attacking side. It's going to be way too complex to rank attacking output. But yeah, the graphic is pure defensive. And you have to take into account, the teams that you are picking from. But in saying that, there is still, I would say, probably 12, 13, 14 options, viable options from these 4 sides. Obviously, from the Knights, we've got KP, we've got Dylan Lucas, we have Greg Marzu, if you're backing him in for a bounce back after some injury-riddled seasons. There's a couple other pod shouts, guys like Tyson Frizzell or KPP, if they get names on the edge. But yeah, your core of your backline with KP and Marzu, and then, if Dylan Lucas can jag good minutes on an edge, he's the guy to be looking at there. For the Bulldogs, mate, obviously the big one, Jacob Carraz, the one that I'm sort of pumping up the most this preseason. If he's staying on a wing, his numbers are exceptional. Then we've got a bolter like Jacob Preston. If he's playing, 70-plus minutes, it's pretty good. Obviously, Satili Tupanua there, Jamin Salmon there as well. Have to monitor that during the preseason, but Jacob Preston could be phenomenal. If you want to go down the Reid Marnie route, safe as houses hooker. I know that he burnt us 24 months ago, but last season with a bit of a bounce him. The Dolphins, obviously, we're looking at guys like Herbie Farnsworth, had the top base power for any center wing in 2024. You've got guys like Kola Finifiliaki, if he's playing big minutes on one of the edges. You've got Tom Gilbert, you've got Max Plath, you've got Jeremy Marshall King as well for those ones that are that way inclined. And the Tigers, mate, there's quite a few, obviously underperforming side last year, and that's going to be a theme for SuperCoach. A lot of the more viable players are from the worse off teams because they underperformed the previous season. And if you expect a bounce back, which I expect bounce backs for, the likes of the Tigers and the Dolphins with new coaches. The Tigers have Jerome Luai, obviously, Lockie Galvin, obviously, but you've got other guys there like Jarrell Skelton, and you've got Alex Seyfarth as well. Apikoris out, potentially out for the first week, but after that is goal kicking. A goal kicking hooker is almost a gold mine, and obviously the most important one, Terrell May, which at time of recording is only 50% owned, which is still way too low.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you should be in anyone's team that's taken it seriously this year. But look, that number will increase as the player base increases too. I think we mentioned a couple of episodes ago, there's only been 30,000 people that have made a team, and we usually start with about 150,000 plus. So yeah, still plenty of teams to pick him as they start making their teams. But yeah, the first 3 rounds, we're looking at those 4 teams as red hot starters with the best 4 or first 3 games. Now, obviously, we're starting to look at trends, and I guess a little bit longer trends. And I'm looking specifically at the Knights. They're very relevant. The Knights and the Bulldogs are the 2 teams that I'm looking at as more longer term plays. Josh, you know, the Knights, they play 5 games against bottom 3 opponents in their first 11 rounds. So they've got a pretty handy start. Not only that, though, but by round 17, they've played 10 of their games with 2 buys included against bottom 8 opponents or defensively when we're talking about leaking Supercoach points. So the Knights have a really red hot start. You mentioned Ponga, you mentioned Marju. If they can really get that left edge humming again, like they did in 2023, then Marju is severely underpriced. But yeah, there is risk there that they don't go that way, and they do a little bit of what they did last year. So it's a bit of a lottery as to we're going to have to keep a keen eye on Knights games, aren't we, to see whether they do start going down the left a bit more than they did last year.
Of course, and I think it plays huge relevance into the Knights as well. Like, it's not like we're sitting here saying, oh, you know, during Origin, the Panthers have really good draws, because it rules out guys like Edwards and Cleary. Whereas the Knights, you know, KP second choice for Queensland, Greg Marzu, who's not playing Origin. So it's like these relevant guys, especially for the Knights during that really tricky part of the season. You've got written down here, the Knights play 2 of the first 2 of the major buys as well. So you can really plan and to attack up to, you know, round 15. And then obviously move off your assets there. But picking guys like KP and Marzu in round 1, if they go the way that you expect them to, should be a very, very hold for 4 months at least. So it's good to have long-term planning, and it's good to pick guys. Not good to pick guys that don't play Origin, but, you know, if you're in a tiebreaker between, you know, Ponga and someone like Trbojevic, let's say you're picking between the 2 of those, well, you know that most likely KP is going to be available through that Origin period compared to someone like Trbojevic.
Yeah, unless Billy Slater goes the KP in the 14 jersey route for Queensland again, which I, you know, watch us all pick him and that happens. But anyway, we'll reassess. But Pong is good enough to play Origin. But yeah, you're right. Reece Walsh has a stranglehold on that number 1 jersey for Queensland. The Tigers are another team that are pretty relevant before we get to the Bulldogs. The Tigers, they play 7 games against bottom 8 defensive teams in the first 11 rounds. So they've got a really nice start to the year. Again, you've got to buy into the narrative that the Tigers are going to improve. And look, I think the jury's still out. You know, everybody's expecting Tigers to be this, you know, a much better team this year, but I think we do need to cool our expectations and just give them a bit of time.
Of course, I can't comment from a defensive standpoint, but with a spine of Coruscant, Galvin, Luai, and Buller, you expect points to be scored. That we might not be able to keep them out, but you expect there's not going to be as much stagnation inside the opponent's 20. And yeah, the Tigers playing 7 games against bottom 8 opponents in the first 11 rounds. So what's that? You've got 4 games out of 11, less or 30%, 25%, 25% of tough games, 75 against, you know, favorable ones. There is, you know, plenty of upside there, and there is a reason why we are keen on Luai, not just because of his stats at halfback for Penrith, but also the draw is very favorable for them as well. And guys like Skelton, if they can get a roll on and you know, put a stranglehold on their jersey, the attacking output should come with that improved spine. The Titans, mate, are a similar, you know, outfit to the Tigers in terms of we expect them to improve. Had some injuries last year, have had some new faces come through the door, another year under Dez. But they've got 5 games out of their first 7 against bottom 8 opponents from rounds 5 to 11. So probably not someone to look at starting with, but that it gives really big credence into buying, you know, a Tino in round 4, a Tino in round 5, Carter Gordon if he eventually gets a hold on the jersey. If AJ Brimson's looking really good in the halves, Jaden Campbell, you know, he's got a sky-high price to start the season. If they have a tough start to the season, he comes down in price. You know, Titans from round 5 to 11, like I said, 5 games out of 7 against bottom 8 opponents could be a really, really good way to look at them.
Yeah, 100%. I think with the round 1 bye, it does rule out a lot of their good options. It doesn't mean that you can't start with any of them. And if you're keen on starting Tino, you know, he's back into contact now, looks pretty good at training from all reports. If you want to buy some Tino stocks, I can't really talk you out of it. He's so cheap. But in saying that, I would rather have a watch the couple of weeks, a bit of a free watch, to be fair. And we can pick him up in round 4 when this Titans draw does free up a little bit. But in saying that, also middle forwards usually get less of a benefit from a really light draw like that. So it's less relevant to really look at your middle forwards as taking advantage of nice matchups like that.
I'll tell you what, we've been recording now for about a month. We've done, between both platforms, we've done probably 8 episodes. I don't think I've mentioned the name Dave Fafita once until now. He is a prime candidate for a round 5 purchase. If he's looking good, if he's looking engaged, I don't expect him to go ballistic in the first 3 rounds with the bye in round 1. If he's coming in with a pretty high break even in round 5, he's a guy I'm really looking to target, especially we know how much he loves to beat up on bad opponents.
Absolutely. Hopefully we see just enough, but he drops some significant cash for us. That would be good. You're going to have to pass the eye test, but score poorly. That's the ideal situation. But yeah, he's definitely a guy that we haven't talked about, strangely. So that is a good point. But they're the teams that we're looking at. Bulldogs on top of that, they don't necessarily have an incredibly good run. We're bringing it up on the screen right here. You'll see the Bulldogs have a really nice first 3 games we talked about. First 5 games, they play 4 teams that are in the bottom 8. They've got the Sharks in there too. And then they've got that awkward round 6 bye. But from there, it's kind of like on-off. Good matchup, tricky matchup. Good matchup, tricky matchup. They've also got the round 13 bye as well, which is the first mini bye round. But they do play 12, 15, and 18, those 3 major byes. Having the round 13 and 16 bye, Josh, the mini byes can catch people out, can't they? Because you've got 3 teams on the bye, but you still have to field a full 17 rather than getting your best 13 players. So it can make people slip up a bit.
And that's the thing, like we're going to talk later on in the episode about teams that play 2 of the 3 major buys or teams that play 3 of 3 major buys. There are a couple this year, but most likely those teams that play a lot of the major buys are the ones that are going to miss the minor buys. So it's all well and good to target these teams that are playing 12, 15, and 18. But you need to be careful for 13, 16, 19 because they're the ones where you have to field a full 17 and not be able to get away with it with just 13 as well. So, obviously you've got to you got to compare both and you'll weigh up the benefits. And obviously we're not saying to do buy planning on the 28th of January. But, as we are getting into round 5, round 6, round 7, not just having a 1 month look at your trades, looking at, okay, what are my numbers going to look like? In a perfect world, come my major buys as well. Because that 6-week period, that 6-7 week period is where you are going to make up a lot of ground or lose a lot of ground because your planning is quite crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. I usually make my rankings run from round 12 or 13 onwards to around 2021. So, if you start red hot and you get a really good start the first 10 weeks or so, and then you've planned really well for your buys, you could be well in the hunt for a top 100. There's
a fine line because we're going to be picking suboptimal players over these weeks. Like if there's a player that's averaging 65 compared to a player that's averaging 71, if the player averaging 65 has much more availability over the bye period, I'm going to pick him. But you can't go 2 ways of just gutting your side because you do still have to play the back end of the season. You've still got around 20 onwards, which is nearly another 2 months of footy as well. So yeah, obviously having key planning, but they're obviously the best fixtures. There are some teams that have some pretty tough ones. None more so than probably the Cowboys. They have a bye and 7 games against top 8 opponents in the first 11 rounds. It's not great. Obviously, we're looking at guys here like John Bateman. We're looking at guys like Scott Drinkwater. They've obviously lost Helam Lukey and potentially having a brand new number 7 in, not confirmed, but it's not great viewing for the Cowboys. Does it put you off Drinkwater as such, or?
Look, I'd be lying if I said no. I'm super keen on Scott Drinkwater this year to a point where if his draw was even a little bit better, I'd be every chance of starting with him this year. Like I think I put a post up on Instagram maybe a couple of days ago where we talk about his 78 average last year, right? And, one of the, I think, top 5 fullbacks. But in saying that, Val had 15.8 points per game from goal kicking last year. We're thinking that Scott Drinkwater probably takes over that, and we're not expecting him to have 15 points in goal kicking. We're thinking the Cowboys take a bit of a step back point scoring wise. But even if he had 8 to 10 extra points on top, he's averaging 85 to 90, which is, we're talking top tier SuperCoach player in general, not just at the position. So, yeah, look, I'd be lying if I said it hasn't affected whether he's in my team or not. He's not in my team right now, probably because of the draw.
Yeah, and I think we'll talk about another fullback with a very tough draw to start the season. Not so tough in the first 2 rounds, but there is the overlooming cloud of potentially missing round 1 for him as well. So it does make fullback quite interesting. We've already touched on KP being almost must-have. Another fullback, actually, a lot of content creators, myself, you, Matrix, others out there are really heralding Manly for having, 5 of the first 7 at 4 Pines Park, which, is exceptional. But the teams that we're playing, Manly are only playing 3 teams in the first 11 rounds that are actually in the bottom 8. So what's that? seven games. Oh, sorry, eight games against top eight opponents. We know that Turbo goes to another level at 4 Pines. I'm not too worried about him, but it's guys like Hamolo Kawatsu, it's guys like Cherry Evans, it's guys like Ruben Garrick that potentially we need to either temper expectations or move off them completely. I've been pretty big on Ruben Garrick all preseason. We know that he's probably 7-8 points underpriced because of the 3 HAA games he had last year. But when you are looking at him playing in a non-favorable position, being center compared to a wing, and playing 8 games against top 8 opponents, it's not fun.
Yeah, and look, I think temper expectations is better than get off them. Like we're talking, Ruben Garrick's still a fantastic option, I think, and we know that Manly score points. It's just a matter of whether they're going to score as many against these harder opponents than what we would expect. We know that Turbo's going to find his way to the line at some point. I remember everybody traded Turbo last year when he was coming up against Penrith, had his highest score of the year against Penrith that round. So it's just the way things go. Turbo finds the line, he does what he does. And I'd be surprised if any of these guys are averaging anything less than maybe 10 to 15 points of what we expect. But we have to definitely ease off the Manly have an amazing draw perspective.
They have an amazing draw from location, not from
That's right.
fixtures, which is fine. Turbo is a guy that, he could play Penrith 11 games in a row, but if more than 50% of those are for 4 Pines, I'm going to be taking him. I had the stats there from 2022, so I had 3 seasons of data that said he averages 89.5 at 4 Pines compared to 78.6. That's not just cherry picking bottom 8 sides or avoiding good teams. That's a 3 seasons worth of data. He clearly performs better at 4 Pines. But yeah, maybe let's not think, what if we get remnants of 2021, because the draw is still quite difficult at the end of the day, as is South Sydney's, mate. Obviously, we know that the first 2 games are beautiful, playing the Dolphins and the Dragons. Both of those games away will make it known, but then it turns absolutely horrid. Sharks at Shark Park, Panthers, Roosters, Cowboys, Dogs, Storm, up until round 9. And then it gets a little bit easier there against, the guys like the Knights, the Broncos, and the Tigers. But the big talking point, Latrell Mitchell is currently unavailable for round 1. I think we need to remember that when we are talking about these premiums. It might get overturned. It probably does get overturned. But as of recording, he is not going to be selected for round 1. If he's missing round 1, we get, 1 good game out of 9? I can't. Not for 880K.
Yeah, look, I'm super keen on Latrell. And for the most part, I think he's matchup proof for the most part. If anything, I kind of like him more that he's playing against harder opponents. And he's probably the only player that I really would say that about. Or maybe there's another 1 or 2. But yeah, Trell decides to turn up against the harder ones that he has a point to prove against.
It's almost like if he's playing the Tigers, he's just very happy to go through the gears for 75 minutes. Whereas if you're playing especially the Roosters or Melbourne, he just seems to go from round 1. Mm. But even still, like if he's not picked round 1, I can't have 880K sitting there when, I'm in the minority here and so are you. We don't have Isaiah Yongi and we probably won't when they're having guys like him, even though it's against Melbourne, still scoring points and making cash. We've got to, if we're employing this 3 big gun strategy, we want to be having all 3 guns on the park. And for as much as I love Latrell this preseason, as for good he's looking, if he's not fit or if he's not available to be picked round 1, I just can't start with him. Even though I know subconsciously that he is great against good teams, it's just 900K is just too much to be missing out on 1 game, especially against the Dolphins.
Yeah, it's a good point. Mate, Canberra also have a pretty tough draw. Ricky Stewart has made it very well known that he's not a fan of the draw either. But each to their own. Canberra have a really tough draw the first 5 rounds. They play against 5 top 8 defensive teams. So that's going to be a pretty tough start for them. Obviously, Canberra a lot less relevant as well when we're talking about SuperCoach options. Probably a pretty easy fade there. But the Sharks also...
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just worth on Canberra. Yeah. I guess the silver lining is the most relevant players that we are looking at are forwards, which should relish in these tougher games. Obviously, you've got Savilo Tamale, but we're picking him at 230K. We don't expect much. If he's your settling 4, you take a bad score every now and then, whatever. But the guys we are looking at are Hosking, Nicholson, and Corey Horsburgh. They're the 3 that we're looking at. They're 3 that should relish in tougher games. So maybe not as bad as first thought for the Raiders.
Yeah, fair call. Mate, the Sharks, relatively relevant. I know Nicho Hynes is always in the conversation every year, as is a couple of his teammates. And the first 4 of their 6 games are against top 8 opponents defensively. So pretty tough start for them to the year as well. And coming back to Souths very quickly, a point that I missed when we bring the draw up. That first nice matchup against Newcastle in round 8 is also Magic Round. So they don't even get a home game there in a nice matchup. So they've got a really tough run.
Yeah, they played 2 great games, but they're both away from home to start the season. They go into 6 weeks worth of horror runs. And when it starts to look bright, it's Magic Round.
Yeah, they're going to play Newcastle at Magic Round. So, rough. But yeah, Canberra, pretty tough as well. We'll talk about them when their season opens up a little bit. And the Sharks, tough to start the year as well. Does that deter you at all from looking at Nicho Hynes? I did get a message from one SC Whisperer this afternoon saying, I'm doing a Cleary and Nicho draft. Wish me good luck. How did that go?
It's still in progress. I haven't found a way to make it work the way that I want it to, but we'll get there eventually. And if I can find one I like, I'll post it. But I mean, the Sharks, I'm not looking at anyone that isn't N Hynes. If I'm being frank, like I'm not an AFB guy. I got burnt last year. I got burnt the year before that. Like I'm just never going to be an AFB guy. I've looked at Brayley, which could be interesting. I'm not against him, but I'm not looking at Ronaldo, Jesse Ramey, and Kaylee Rowe to start the season. I'm certainly not looking at Will Kennedy. So it's just like I'm not really looking at any Sharks players, but Nicho, obviously we'd love him to be playing the Dragons every week, where he seems to do absurd things to them. But I think for me it's like with this draw that they've got, I'm pretty happy to just let it go.
It's hard to say that about Nicho Hynes, isn't it? We just know what he can do. But
he'll play a trial. He'll put on 3 try assists. He'll look like Dally M, Nicho Hynes, and we're like, oh, what do we do? And it's rough because for me it's like I'm never ever going without Cleary. So it's then finding 500k because that's going from Sandon Smith up to Nicho Hynes, and then I need to remove it from other places where I don't want to, which is center wing. So it's the Sharkies. There's only 1 or 2 relevant players for me. If you're an AFB fan out there, then it's probably positive. You would expect him to perform well against poor sides. His biceps are looking very large after a photo shoot that we saw this morning, and he's looking very trim.
Very full. Yeah, apparently dropped a fair bit of weight as well. There's word, we won't go into it heaps, but there's word that he's dropped weight and probably going to play less minutes for more impact this year, which is interesting. So, we might not get the 60-minute AFB that we expected to come across to the Sharks, but if we got 50 minutes with a much higher PPM, he's probably going to end up scoring the same, if not better.
Yeah, it probably balances out. But it's, obviously the big thing for AFB is maintaining that try involvement that he had. So for me, it's definitely a watch, especially these first 6 weeks. I don't expect AFB to be going ballistic. And if he's looking, as good as what he had, or even if he's, dropped off a little bit and we can pick him up at a better price, then he's someone to definitely target as well.
For sure. That is the relevance, I guess, the talking points for the first 11 rounds. And obviously there are some bits and pieces there that we'll go into more depth for the Patreon. I'll be writing an article in the next couple of days doing a strength of schedule for all 17 teams. So if you want to jump in and become a Patreon member, you can do that with the link below. And today's episode is brought to you by Ryan from Astute Newstead, helping you get into your dream home and lower those interest rates. So if your interest rate is above 6.2%, then all you need to do is contact Ryan. He'll give you a no obligation free consult. Won't cost you a thing. He'll chat with you about your situation, regardless of whether you want to save some money, get some extra cash in your pocket, you want to renovate, or you just want to buy into your dream home. So Ryan's link is in the description below. Now, Josh, buy rounds are relevant, not overly relevant right now at this point of the season, but it is a talking point when we're looking at the draw. So usually the first 2 things I'll look at are teams that are at least playing the first 2 major buys, because that might impact my selection with if I'm looking at A player versus B. If the B player is playing the first 2 major buys and the A player has the buy in round 12 and I can't split them, that's probably the deciding factor for me. And there's 3 teams that play 2 major buys, being the Knights. We've already talked in depth about them. The Dolphins and the Sharks play the first 2 major buys. So we said that the Sharks had a pretty tough start to the year, Josh, but they will be quite relevant when we get to round 10, 11, 12, when they are going to cover 2 of those major buys for us.
Yeah, and off the top of my head, not many or any Sharks are going to be in Origin consideration, especially none of their Supercoach relevant ones, which are fantastic. Britton Nicola is always an option during Origin, and if AFB is looking the best he is, Nico, we know that he said he struggles at Origin, probably not going to be selected. And then guys like Ronaldo Mulatalo, Sione Katoa are always there or thereabouts. But I think the thing that I'm looking at with the Knights is they benefit really well from an early bye in the season. The Knights have a bye in round 4, which is not great for KP and Marzio owners. But we were talking earlier about teams that really did a favor during these major buys, generally are hindered through that minor buy period. The Knights don't have a bye from round 4 up until round 19. So they play 12, they play 13, they play 15, they play 16, and then they play, they don't play 19. So very, very tasty. KP, if you can stomach the round 4 bye, he is a hold all the way up until at least around 20 for me. The Sharks are the same thing. Like we said, play the first 2 major buys, and the Dolphins as well. So, if Osaka is looking back to his best, if Herbie's looking fantastic, if Max Plath, if anything happens to either Tom Gilbert or Jeremy Marshall-King, Max Plath is obviously the big winner there. And JMK and obviously Gilbert if he's not in Origin considerations too. So, yeah, really, really positive to see 3 teams not playing for 2 of the first majors, but the Knights especially missing all the minors apart from the back end where you can cover for
that's
that
right.
better.
Yeah, for sure. And then obviously even more relevance comes to the Bulldogs, Manly, and the Roosters playing all 3 major buys. But you might think that's a positive, and for the most part it is, unless you are an Origin player. Because if you're an Origin player, like a James Tedesco, or if he ends up getting picked, if it's Dylan Edwards, whoever, I'd say Teddy's probably had his Origin time done, so it's probably positive for him. But the Origin relevant players, your Angus Crichtons of the world, for the Roosters especially, we see them play round 12, 15 and 18, and that's all well and good, but the Origin players aren't available for 12, 15 and 18. And then if you've also got to buy them in rounds 13 and 16 or one of the mini buys or 2 of the mini buys for the most part, the problem then becomes you're going to miss 12, 15, 18, 13 and 16. And for the Roosters here, we'll see they've got to buy in round 14 and 17. So Gus Crichton could end up only playing 3 of 9 games through that period as an Origin player. So not ideal for the Origin players. Fantastic for anybody we know that's not going to suit up in the Sky Blue or the Maroon, Josh.
Yeah, of course. And on the Bulldogs as well, we were saying how good it is that they've got all three major buys. I would argue that the minor buys are more important to prioritize, and the Bulldogs are missing 2 of those minors. So you can cover for the majors a little bit easier than you can for the minors, and the minors buys being the ones directly after the majors. So they're the ones with 3 teams that are going to be out where you have to suit up a full 17. So, yeah, obviously it's great that the Bulldogs, Manly and the Roosters are all playing the major buys, but have a look at what their schedule actually looks like the week after those majors. And like Brian said, some of these Origin guys may only suit up for 2 or 3 games over the space of 8 weeks. So you might hear us speak about offloading. Gus Crichton could be averaging a 3 or 5 round average of 90 in round 11, but don't be surprised if we say, oh, hey, actually he's probably a better off option to be sold because you've got at the time probably 850k tied up that's maybe playing 3 weeks out of 8.
Yeah, not ideal. I mean, when you look at the amount of points, no matter like 90 points a game over 3 games is 270 points across 9 weeks, ends up being a 30 average for you during that time. So, yeah, you've got to wait up.
I haven't looked at Origin dates this year, but in major years as well, and for anyone who asks, if you get selected into Origin camp, you play the week before the major buys, you don't play the major buys, and then it's a case of if you back up or not. So if you're an Origin player that doesn't back up, you're going to miss at least the major buy and then maybe the minor after. So you might have a lot of players in those 3 teams that are on the minor buy. But if you've got a bunch of Origin players that aren't going to back up, or if they do back up, potentially underperform, yeah, you could be up shit creek without a paddle.
Yeah, it could be in a lot of trouble. That's for sure. But look, we'll probably do a lot more specific content for the Origin period when we get closer to that point. I'm not making too many of my starting decisions based on what the Origin period looks like, but it is a factor and it is something you need to consider. So we'll tackle that a little bit closer to it. But Josh, I think we've done a pretty good job summarizing what the schedule looks like and where we'd be focusing our time. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
No, I see you've got in the show notes here, wrap up. I want to ask, how is your team looking? Are you settled? Because I'm probably like 5 players off. I think I've whenever I make a new draft, there's the same 18, 19 players out of my 26. But there's a couple of ones I'm toying up. Obviously, Latrell being one of them, Drinkwater being another, and there's been a couple of centre wing additions today, which I don't know how long they'll last.
Yeah, I've seen them. I like it. I'm not going to call myself settled. No, I think I'm probably set on maybe 70% of my team. It's just structure-wise how I want to do things. I've got maybe the 30 to 35 players that I'm looking at. I don't think I'll stray from outside that. But then it comes down to, am I going to run double cheapy hooker? Initially, I had JMK in my team. He's not there right now, but I'm just playing around with a couple of things structure-wise. Do I go with 2 gun front row forwards, or do I go with one of the cheaper mid-range kind of guys as a starter to start the season so I can free up money elsewhere? There's a lot of different moving parts. The guys that I am locked in on at the moment are the obvious ones, your Pongas, your Turbos. Trell, if he gets to play round 1. I've been pretty set on Luai, and anybody who follows me on socials would know that. Nathan Cleary's a lock. For the most part, I think the obvious ones are going to stay and they're not going anywhere. But yeah, there's a few moving parts.
Yeah, I think the players. I think there's probably, like I said, 5 or 6 players I'm not sure on, and there's like 30 or 40K between the price points. So it's like if I upgrade one, I have to downgrade someone else. So it's it's a bit of a double-edged sword there. But I think the team's looking okay. Obviously, trials. The minute someone scores a try, they'll be straight in, and someone that plays 10 minutes is going to be straight out, and we're going to overreact massively. But this is probably the point of the preseason where we've hit a lull. We sort of have a good idea of where we're at. The mania of when the app opens has sort of settled, and now it's just about fine tuning. And then obviously it's going to be absolutely turned up to 10 once trials start.
Yeah, trials is the fun part. That's when I get to change my team 30 times after game 1. And but again, that's why we love SuperCoach. We've been tweaking since the team picker opened in December, so that's all part of it. But hopefully this schedule episode has given you an idea, maybe, or solidified some of the options that you were maybe 50-50 on, that now you've realised have a pretty good draw and can behold some of these Knights guys, Bulldogs, etc. So yeah, plenty to like there. But we'll dive into some of the buy round stuff a little bit closer when the season's already started. But guys, thanks for tuning in. We've got plenty of content coming your way. We've got plenty of positional pods coming your way as well. We're going to dive into all the guns and the cheapies and the value, and we'll give you our fades. We're also toying around with an idea of a hot takes episode, which I'm sure you'll all love, where we give one hot take per team.
Always ages very season. Well, and people never ever quote tweet it 7 months later, and it always goes very smoothly.
Yes, great for content creators, for credibility. That's for sure. But it is fun. It will be fun. And we've got a fair few other episodes planned, as we do inside the Patreon as well. So if you want to join there, you can join via the link below. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you for the next episode. We'll catch you then.